I think you're in for an interesting, compelling, engaging day of ideas and questions. Things will never change. The more things change, the more they stay the same. You can't teach an old dog new tricks. I mean, there's really only two sides to every coin. And one of my personal favorites, it is what it is. I can't think of any way to say anything more meaningless. Well, it is what it is. Isn't that a way of almost letting go and giving up? What is it about all those cliches, all about those statements? I mean, there's truth there for sure. There's something that we can hold on to, and there's a reality to it, but I think there's a complacency to it as well. There's a notion, there's a sense of mediocrity attached to those phrases, to those cliches, that disengages, that allows us to step back and say, oh, well, I really can't make a difference after all anyway, so why would I bother? Remember, after all, the more things change, the more things stay the same, right? Because it's the only constant, right? So therefore, why would I actually bother? Fear, complacency, and an unwillingness to admit that not everything is measured by the status quo. That's what today's about. That's what conferences like this are about. It's about asking deeper questions. It's about going beyond scratching the surface. It's about digging down. It's about peeling back those layers and saying, what is this thing that we're here to talk about today? Whether it's the nonprofit sector or the corporate sector or the political sector or the education sector, it doesn't matter. Because, you know, after all, the more things change, the more they stay the same. 12 years ago, I met a man by the name of Soon Rotana. Mr. Soon Rotana, 12 years ago, I didn't know his name. It was in Cambodia, Siem Reap. A lot of the work that I do in the international sector takes me into that region quite often. And I met this man, and I was there visiting Cambodia for 4 weeks with my wife, Elizabeth, and we were at the Siem Reap War Museum. And I sat down with Soon because he wanted to tell me his story. A simple act of one human being connecting with another, two different cultures, two different languages. I don't speak a lot of Khmer. He spoke quite a bit of English, and we communicated, we connected, we commiserated. He was a Khmer Rouge soldier. He fought with the Cambodian army, both sides. He had lost a leg to a landmine. He had a prosthetic leg on. He was an active, energetic, passionate guy who wanted to change the world, who is changing the world. And we connected 12 years ago. He let me feel the little bits of shrapnel that were still in his arm. He had this great toothless smile. He smoked like a chimney, and we had a great time together. 12 years later, I'd been working in the country for many years. 12 years later, I wind up back in Siem Reap for another project. I say, I wonder if that war museum even still exists. I wonder if Soon, and I didn't know his name then, is still at the museum. And so I took a tuk-tuk, and a tuk-tuk is kind of like a taxi cab, but a little more in your face, for those of you who actually have traveled on tuk-tuks. And we couldn't find the museum, and the Cambodian driver that I had, he didn't know where it was either, and we finally rolled up on it, and I said, I think it's down that way, and the things had changed in the region, and more buildings and hotels and palm trees and so on, and we found it. And I thought I saw a profile that I recognized. And I went and I walked through the museum, and I saw the face, and I knew it was him 12 years later. And I walked up to him and I said, you have no idea who I am. But 12 years ago, we sat right over there, and you told me your story. We talked about landmines and war and peace, and we talked about the Canadian involvement in the treaties and all these interesting, wonderful things. And slowly this smile started to appear in his face. And if he wasn't Cambodian, he would have stood up and he would have hugged me. And we connected. And today, I've been back 4 times since with a friend of mine by the name of Shondell, and together we're making a film, and we're going to tell Soon Rotana's story and why war is crazy. His words. A story of forgiveness, and reconciliation. 12 years, a simple act, a simple meeting, an ordinary event that we've now taken because of Soon's interaction with me and his smile and his story. We're turning things upside down. Because remember, you know, the more things change, the more they stay the same, right? I mean, we all believe that, don't we? 3 things, I think. It requires us to change our worldview. It requires us to know that what we do actually is already making a difference, and that where we're sitting in our seats here today at this conference, we are already agents of change. We're already making a difference in our own way, but the question I have for you is it active, is it passive? Passive change, right? The leaves change color, the snow falls, sadly we lose our hair, and so on. My daughter, 7 years old, Victoria, said 3 things I'm not allowed to do. Can't get any tattoos, can't get any piercings, and she doesn't want me to grow any hair. And I said, sweetie, I think I've got that one covered. That's not going to happen anytime too soon. And then there's active change. Active, passionate, compelling, engaged change. And what does that require? It requires us to change our understanding, our way of thinking about the way change, and what change means to each one of us here. A change in thinking is simple. And why is it simple? Says David. It's simple because we need to start seeing the ordinary as being extraordinary. Simple. The little things matter. Your ideas matter. Your questions matter. You matter. Why is that so difficult to see? What is the finger in the dike? What's the wedge getting in our way? We need to take ordinary and turn it into extraordinary. Not in the sense of, oh, isn't that wonderful? I mean extraordinary. A change about the way we think about change. The pebble will fall in the pond, the splash and ripple effect will grow. The dominoes will fall. It happens all the time. And to me, that's a pretty exciting thing. That's usually an applause cue in the business.